The next week's chapter title preview was very ominous. Just in case you didn't read it yourself at the end of the chapter chapter preview is called The Seven Deadly Sins End. Does that not sound ominous? Like, that sounds really ominous. Like, something really bad's gonna happen in the next chapter. Either, number one, Meliodas is going to wake up, and that means that he's going to conclude and just destroy the Seven Deadly Sins, or the remaining Seven Deadly Sins, or something else is going to happen, something critical. So, I'm kind of curious. I'm curious to see where Nakaba wants to take it, especially with that chapter preview title. But anyways, though, one thing I want to mention is that the chapter says Seven Deadly Sins End. But technically there isn't seven deadly sins, because Bon isn't really considered a sin anymore since he's just so weak. He's fodder. Get jokes aside, okay? Jokes aside. Anyways, this chapter was truly sad. It was sad, but expected. It was a very, in a way, it was a predictable chapter, but it was a very sad chapter because two characters that have been really cool, interesting designs, and been with us for a while now, have finally died. They're gone. You have it to where the previous Giant and Fairy King gave up their titles to the next generation, Diane and King, and now they are just a simple Giant and Fairy, and then they died on the battlefield against Chandler. Now, if there's one thing that this chapter does prove, it's the fact that Chandler is incredibly powerful. I mean, we didn't really get a good glimpse at what his power scaling was, because of how he's been weakened, but also the opponents he was fighting was our main character, so you factor all these things in, we didn't really know the level of Chandler. Even though he was one of the highest ranking demons, we still didn't really have a good grasp at what his level was at. And after seeing this chapter, it's very clear. It's very clear that Chandler is very strong. I mean, he basically made the previous Giant King and the Fairy King look like fodder when he wiped them out. I mean, they only stalled him for a brief bit, and then he wiped them out like it was nothing. And so, it proves that Chandler is way above them, like beyond them. And we gotta remember and factor all of this in, that Chandler is nowhere near his peak, his max, because he has been incredibly weakened. I mean, his magic and spirit is like straight down in the tubes and all that, so this man is nowhere near his peak, so that proves that for him to just be able to do something like that to the previous two kings, that lets us know that this man is way above the seven deadly sins, and effectively, it made King and Diane basically fodder in this chapter. That's kind of what this looks like. The way this looks and the way, you know, Nakaba-sensei wrote it, it looks like he basically let us know that Diane and King are nowhere near Chandler's level. Even though they're strong, they have a lot of potential, they can get very strong, they just cannot fight this man right now. He's just way too powerful, way beyond them. They cannot fight him. So, like I said, basically, Nakaba-sensei let us know that Diane and King are considered fodder at this moment when they're comparing themselves with Chandler. So, that's not even putting in the fact with what, you know, Zelda's power is, like how far up there on the status board he is, because he has the Demon King's power, and then we're not even factoring in the Demon King, we're not factoring in, like, you know, Elizabeth, what she was, and her level, to Meliodas' level, to the, you know, the Supreme Goddess. I mean, there's just so many things to factor in, but at this time, though, our seven deadly sins are basically fodder against their opponents right now. There's just no way. They can't fight Chandler, which is very weakened, very, very low right now. Like, he's hitting empty. They can't even strike this man down. Like, for instance, the previous Giant King and Fairy King can't even take him down. That proves that the seven deadly sins, they're nowhere near the league of this man. They cannot bring him down. So, yeah, there needs to be a training arc. Not just for Bon. Not just Bon. Even though Bon is basically fodder of fodder, he doesn't just need a power-up. It's actually all of our sins. So, here's the thing I gotta throw out there. If Bon needs a power-up, he's gonna need two double power-ups. Because, I mean, if, like, everybody else needs power-ups, Bon needs two power-ups. Because just getting his Sacred Treasure, I don't think, is going to be able to be enough to fight opponents like that. Now, what does this necessarily mean? With Chandler being this strong, this basically lets us know that the only one that could possibly even compete with Chandler at this time, part of our main cast, would most likely be Escanor or Meliodas if he was good. Meliodas, I don't know, is going to become good. I have no idea. I can see Elizabeth dying and then Meliodas becoming good, but I don't think Meliodas is probably going to become good unless Elizabeth dies. So, that means only Escanor could stand up to Chandler. So, yeah. Now, we gotta granted, you know, Chandler is like a complete counter to Escanor. I mean, this man uses like the moon and all that, could summon Eternal Night, so he is incredibly strong and a very good counter to Escanor. However, we don't really know how Escanor's the one form would be against, you know, him. So we have no idea. But it seems like that's what Nakaba-sensei is trying to hype up and build up. That Escanor, once again, is going to have to stand up and fight a very strong opponent because the other Sins are just nowhere near the level of the opponent they must face. So anyways, besides all of that, let's talk about King's potential. So, the previous King basically told King in this chapter, you have a lot of potential. You have the potential to be the strongest fairy the world has ever seen. I mean, you already are on par with me, almost on par with me, and your wings have just started to grow out of your back. So for you to be this strong with your wings just being like it is, I can't imagine where you'd be in the future. So this lets us know that King, he is very low right now in terms of what his potential is. Like, he can be way up there, like, really strong, and just, right now, it's just like he's a baby chicken, and he needs to grow up to be very big and spread his wings out. So, I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, King's, you know, continued growth. Diane as well, we also see that she has the potential to be the next, you know, Queen of the Giants. She will be the actual Giant Queen. So I'm looking forward to that as well. I mean, she has this certain side to her that's very compassionate. I like how, you know, Balor was saying, look, okay, your personality and what you strive to protect and when you know how to back up and retreat as well, you have these certain traits to your character that the giant race needs. And so that lets us know that Diane isn't just being acknowledged for her power, but she's being acknowledged for the fact of her personality and how she will be a very good queen to lead her people down the proper path instead of dying in the thousands and making the race almost completely extinct. That's basically what he was trying to say. So these two characters that, you know, the previous fairy and Giant King, they kind of finally managed to redeem themselves in a way. They have been shackled by their, you know, hard and cruel past, and it seems like they finally were able to kind of unshackle themselves and fight for who they believed in or what they believed in and set the road for the next generation. I really like that final little dialogue at the end of the chapter when you see, you know, Balor and then also the previous Fairy King. They're just, you know, talking in their head how they would love to see Elizabeth and Meliodas once again, and they wish them, like, eternal happiness or happiness in the future after all of their suffering. That's a very sad moment because when you see these two die at the end of the chapter, that's basically what Elizabeth and Meliodas want. They want to die, but they can't. So, when you see these two passing on, it has a double meaning. It has a big meaning there because Meliodas wants to die. Elizabeth wants to die with Meliodas, and vice versa, both of them. So, when you see these two die at the end of the chapter, when they say, hopefully you'll find happiness at the end of your suffering, that basically is what they want right there. So, it's kind of messed up when you think about it. But I want to end it there. The chapter overall, very simple chapter, but a very enjoyable chapter. Let me know your thoughts. How did you feel about Chandler and his power against, you know, the previous kings? Let me know your honest thoughts. I love you guys. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. And if you like this video, please leave a like. I love you guys. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.